back in the 1950s and the 1960s, down to the following decades, many colonies in Africa were granted political independence. But have these colonies been granted economic and financial independence? Well, if you think that imperial powers have now relinquished control of the countries they initially lorded over, then you may be in for a rude shock. To this day, colonial powers continue to exert considerable influence over the financial and economic operations of these countries and continue to exploit the vast mineral and natural resources of the continent. In the light of this, African leaders who have attempted to steer their countries away from this imperial dominance have often been met with resistance and assassinations. The West considers such policies as a threat to their economic interest in Africa. In this edition of History Media, we examine 3 African countries whose economies have been crippled and their leaders assassinated by imperial powers for attempting to save their countries from Western economic exploitation. In other words, their economic and financial policies threatened the West and her domination of Africa. Please stay tuned. Welcome to History Media In-Depth History. We begin in Togo. The decision by Togolese President Sylvanus Olympio to break away from the CFA franc currency, which was imposed on French colonies in 1945 at gunpoint, did not go down well in Paris, leading to his assassination in 1963. The CFA franc was introduced to French colonies in West Africa in 1945, replacing the French West African francs. Following the outcome of the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1945, many countries, including France, were required to peg their currencies or set a fixed exchange rate to the US dollar. This makes the US dollar the world's new reserve currency. As a consequence of this new policy, the French franc was greatly devalued. In an attempt to fight this devaluation, France established a CFA franc, a currency that was set at a fixed exchange rate with the French francs in order to reduce the risk. Although the CFA franc was a successful measure that helped to stabilize French inflation, it however made way for continued economic exploitation of their former French colonies in Africa. The colonies were expected to deposit 50% of their nation's reserve in France's treasury, effectively transferring half of their economic agency into the hands of France. While these measures may have initially boosted these nations' economies through increased exports from key economic sectors such as manufacturing and agriculture, the benefits for African countries were short-lived. By the mid-1990s, this French monetary policy imposed on African nations had resulted in drastic spikes in inflation in the African countries involved. In reaction to the imposition of negative French international policy on Togo as a solution to France's domestic problems, Togo's president from 1958 to 1963, Sylvanus Olympio, attempted to establish the Togolese franc as an independent currency of Togo, as well as a central bank of Togo. However, before he could complete these reforms, he was killed by a French-backed Togolese soldier in 1963, and Togo's new French-backed dictator retained the nation in the CFA system under a de facto French administration. Before we continue, remember to like this video so that YouTube can show it to more people. If you are new here, consider subscribing to History Media. Thank you. Another country we are looking at today is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Just like France, Belgium has a history of intervening in the economic affairs of its former African colonies. 2 weeks after what is now the Democratic Republic of the Congo gained independence from Belgium in 1960, the southern province of Katanga proclaimed her own independence. Katangan rebels were supported by Belgian mercenaries in the hope that the region's abundant resources might later be controlled by a Belgian-run puppet. Patrice Lumumba, the revolutionary leader who fought the country's independence, opposed this move. His desire was to see a united and prosperous Congo. He was motivated by a belief that it was critical to prevent Western powers from exploiting the mineral resources of the region. Lumumba sought the military assistance of the United Nations and the United States in fighting the rebels, but was denied. However, in his effort to keep the country one, he turned to the Soviet Union for military assistance. This decision infuriated Belgium and the United States, who were concerned that the Congo might become a communist state after relying heavily on the Soviet Union. This was due to the Cold War at the time. As a result of this, they instigated the arrest and subsequent execution of Lumumba. Lumumba was replaced by Joseph Elio, whose tenure was equally short-lived. Unfortunately, the political crisis that followed would lead to the subsequent emergence of Mobutu Sese Seko, a Belgium-backed dictator who staged a coup in 1965 and ruled his country under tight grip until 1997. Belgium and the United States effectively ended the life of a revolutionary who would have taken his country away from the clutches of neo-colonialism and harnessed their vast mineral resources for the good of her people. Historians, however, believe that the Western intervention in Congo set the foundation for 2 civil wars in the country, in addition to major economic instability. Another country whose leader was taken out for championing an audacious economic liberation move that seemed to threaten Western powers is Libya's Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi, the former Libyan leader, was killed for attempting to promote African economic independence over Western dependency. Gaddafi was one of those who championed the formation of the African Union and was pushing for the establishment of the African Central Bank. He was also at the forefront of the call for the creation of an independent African currency backed by gold. In a leaked email to Hillary Clinton from her advisor, Sidney Blumenthal, 145 tons of gold and a similar amount in silver held by the Libyan Central Bank were to be used to create a pan-African currency based on the Libyan gold dinar and was designed to provide the Francophone African countries with an alternative to the French francs CFA. Blumenthal explains to Clinton Libya's intention to establish an African central bank backed by gold. The concept of an African central bank threatened the West for 2 fundamental reasons. To begin with, a new gold-backed currency would threaten the worldwide supremacy of the dollar, since many African and Arab countries participating in the new currency system would probably abandon the dollar as their reserve currency in favor of the new Pan-African currency. Indeed, the president of France at the time, Nicolas Sarkozy, went as far as to remark in public that Libya would be a threat to the financial security of mankind. What this implies is that he was concerned about the potential upheaval of the global economic status quo. Second, the new currency threatened France's economic control over its former colonies because it provides CFA colonies with a currency other than the CFA francs. In this email, Blumenthal mentioned this threat to France's economic influence over Africa as one of the reasons for Sarkozy's French war on Libya. The other reason considered was France's desire to control a large oil production from Libya. In addition to the Arab Spring revolt in Libya in 2011, which increased civil unrest and championed radical terrorist groups in the region, Gaddafi's vision for Africa and its potential ramification for the West was more than enough reason for Western officials to justify and propel an attack on Libya, which subsequently deposed Muammar Gaddafi. On the surface, however, neo-colonial powers continue to defend their brutal exploit in Africa, claiming, for example, in the case of Libya, that the assassination attack on Muammar Gaddafi was for humanitarian reasons. While it is true that Gaddafi was a brutal leader, it is a general consensus that his assassination was because of his desire for economic emancipation of the entire Africa from Western hegemony. Today, Libya is left in a worse state than it ever was before Western invasion in 2011. The assassination created a power vacuum for numerous political and military factions to take advantage of. One notable example of which is the emergence of ISIS. Analysts believe that the current condition of infrastructure, law, order and poverty in Libya have deteriorated, causing many Libyans to only wish that Gaddafi was still in power. It is necessary to state, however, that the economic policies championed by these African leaders would probably have had some negative impact on these Western countries who exploit Africa for their economic gains. But as countries who pride themselves on freedom and equality, it is only right that they allow African countries the freedom to experiment with their own economic policies. So, what is your thought on this? Let me see your thought in the comment section. Click here to watch this video for more on the execution of Patrice Lumumba by a Katangan firing squad. Remember to like this video and subscribe to History Media for more in-depth history stories. And don't forget to on the bell notification so you don't miss any update from us. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.